I never thought I'd say this, but the advice that ruined my life came from my own daughter. Maya had always been smart, perceptive, and somewhat bold for her age. At 22, she had strong opinions about relationships and love, many of which I had admired, until the day I acted on one that would shatter my life. My wife, Priya, and I had been married for over 15 years. Our marriage had been stable, but over time, predictable. We had fallen into routines, comfortable but monotonous. When Maya noticed my frustration with the lack of excitement in our relationship, she innocently, or perhaps recklessly, suggested something that sounded harmless at the time. "Dad, maybe you and Mom should try an open marriage. Just a little freedom could bring the spark back." I hesitated. Priya and I had never even considered it. But Maya's argument was compelling. She spoke about trust, honesty, and personal growth, framing it as a modern approach to a long-term relationship. Against my better judgment, I brought it up with Priya. To my surprise, she seemed intrigued rather than offended, and so we opened our marriage. What I thought would be an experiment to bring excitement and honesty soon spiraled into chaos. The freedom was intoxicating. It started innocently, dates with strangers, flirting, and casual encounters. But I quickly realized that opening the marriage blurred the lines of loyalty and trust more than I had anticipated. It was during this time that I met Neha. She was charming, attentive, and everything I felt was missing in my marriage. I justified my affair in my mind, telling myself that Priya and I had agreed to this, that Maya's advice had been well-intentioned, and that nothing was truly wrong. But deep down, I knew I was crossing a line, one that could never be undone. I didn't anticipate the consequences. Priya found out, not through confessions, but through subtle clues, suspicious texts, and the intuitive sense that comes from years of shared life. The confrontation was brutal. Priya's eyes, once filled with love, were now pools of hurt and betrayal. She didn't scream. She didn't lash out. She simply said, "I can't do this anymore," and walked out of my life, leaving me with the ruins of our marriage. The fallout didn't stop there. Maya, seeing what had happened, was horrified. She had never intended for me to actually cheat. She had only suggested opening the marriage as a theoretical idea, not as a license to betray trust. The guilt crushed me. My daughter's innocent advice had inadvertently set the stage for my downfall, and I was forced to confront the reality. I had made my own choices, and the consequences were mine to bear. Losing Priya was only part of the punishment. Friends and family turned their backs, gossip spread, and my reputation, both personal and professional, was tarnished. Neha, the woman I thought was my escape, eventually left as well, unwilling to deal with the chaos I had created. I was left alone, stripped of the life I had once taken for granted. Months later, I began to reflect on the chain of events. I realized that no advice, no matter how well-meaning, can absolve us of responsibility for our actions. Maya had been a catalyst, but the choices, the betrayal, and the recklessness had been entirely mine. I had allowed curiosity and desire to override loyalty, respect, and love, the very foundations of my marriage. The lesson was painful, but necessary. I had to rebuild not just my life, but my sense of morality and self-worth. Therapy, reflection, and honest conversations with Maya helped me understand the gravity of my mistakes. I apologized not only to Priya but to myself for losing control and allowing my impulses to dictate my actions. Over time, I started to rebuild my life. I focused on personal growth, career, and repairing the fractured relationship with Maya. Priya, understandably, remained distant, but I respected her boundaries and learned that some mistakes, no matter how deeply regretted, can never be fully undone. The experience taught me an invaluable lesson. Advice, even from loved ones, can never replace personal responsibility. Maya had been well-intentioned, but I had acted selfishly. Betrayal once committed changes lives irrevocably. I had paid the price for my choices, and it was a price I would carry for the rest of my life. Now I speak openly about my story, not as a confession for sympathy, but as a cautionary tale. Relationships are fragile, trust is sacred, and freedom without accountability is dangerous. My life was ruined because I forgot these truths, and the pain of that ruin has been a harsh but effective teacher. In the end, I rebuilt pieces of my life, but the scars remain. Priya's absence is a constant reminder, and the trust I once took for granted can never be fully restored. I live with regret, yes, but also with wisdom, a knowledge that freedom without boundaries and advice without discernment can be catastrophic. And so, I walk forward carefully, every choice weighed, every temptation scrutinized, and every relationship honored with the respect it deserves. My life was ruined once by a single misstep inspired by good intentions. I will never let it happen again.